Hello and welcome to Module 8 of SMART Board training, where we're going to take a break from Smart Notebook and see what we can do with the SMART Board in other types of applications. We'll use it with your document camera, we'll use it with a PDF document, use it in a browser, in Office programs like Word and PowerPoint, even writing on the desktop, and then also recording what is happening on the screen with Smart Recorder. So let's take a look at these learning targets. So I can install Smart Notebook Advantage 2015 document camera integration from the Software Center. Yes, that is a mouthful. And then I can use the Smart Video Player. Now that results from installing this to display and annotate a paper document through my document camera. So that's using the Ladybug or the Elmo, putting a piece of paper underneath, and using the Smart Video Player that again shows up when you install this document camera integration. Now that's one option for using the document camera. You can also use the Ladybug software. So if you don't already have it, we're going to see how to install that Ladybug 2.0 software from the Software Center, and then use Ladybug 2.0 to display and annotate a paper document through my document camera. So realize these two learning targets versus these two learning targets are basically two different options for using your document camera and then being able to annotate it on the Smart Board. I can also open, navigate, and annotate a PDF document in Smart Ink Document Viewer. So that is part of the Smart Notebook package, but it's a separate application that opens up a PDF document. Instead of using Acrobat Reader that you might be familiar with to look at a PDF document, you can open it up in the Smart Ink Document Viewer and just have more options for being able to write on it and put various things on top of it. I can navigate and annotate a web page in a browser. I'll be primarily using Chrome just because that's my personal favorite, but the ideas do go across the three, Firefox or Internet Explorer as well. I can navigate and annotate a Word document. I can navigate and annotate a PowerPoint presentation. I can make a quick note on the desktop. I think we saw that early on in the training, but I'll bring that up again if you just want to get information up as quick as possible. You can write directly on the desktop of your computer. I can record a video of what is happening on the screen with Smart Recorder. Also part of the Smart Notebook package is a program called Smart Recorder that basically lets you just record anything that is happening on the screen, whether it's in Smart Notebook or not. And that will answer this question about explaining the difference between the lesson recorder in Smart Notebook. If you'll recall from Module 6, I believe it was, where we made animations within Smart Notebook using the lesson recorder. Well, similar, but using the Smart Recorder records, again, anything on the screen, whether you're in Smart Notebook or not. So let's get going. So we're going to start off talking about how to use your document camera with your Smart Board in a couple different ways. The first way is using the Smart Video Player, which you won't find until you install this Smart Notebook Advantage document camera integration from the Software Center. So to get to the Software Center, we do go to the Start screen. Most of you will probably find it somewhere around here. It's here for me. If you don't see it anywhere, even if you scroll across and you don't see Software Center anywhere, just start typing Software Center, and by the time you get software out there, you can probably see the Software Center is there. Now, if this goes for any application, if it's something that you do want here or something that you even want, let me back up a bit, down here to live permanently, you can make that happen pretty easily. So let me again type in software, and I can right click. Remember, of course, that's just a right click on my mouse, but I can also hit this button here to make my next click be a right click. I can right click and I can pin that to start or pin that to taskbar, and it's just a way to access the things that you use most often. So of course that says unpin because mine is already sitting here pinned to the start. I could also pin it to the taskbar if I used it that frequently. So keep in mind that goes for any application that you use frequently. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and launch it, and yours will take a little bit longer since mine was actually already open. But what you want to do here is go to the search bar and type in Smart. Now, since you already have Smart Notebook installed, you should only get one thing that pops up, which is that Smart Notebook Advantage document camera integration there. So with that highlighted, I want to click Install, and then it'll pop me over to the installation status, and hopefully we'll see it appear and run through the install process. Now once it finishes installing from the Software Center, you will notice a new icon on your desktop. It looks like this, and it says Video Player underneath it. It's a little misleading because it doesn't mention Smart at all, And video player, well, we're not exactly playing videos. We want to show off what the camera is looking at from your document camera. Before you dive into that, though, I urge you to restart the computer. After almost any installation of a new program, it's always a good idea to restart. So I'm going to go here and to restart, and then we'll come back. Okay, and now I've restarted, so I'm ready to use my document camera with this video player app. First thing I want to do is turn on the document camera, though, and make sure it's hooked up. So it's got a power cord that's hooked up into a power source and a USB cable that winds around and plugs into an open USB port in your computer. Now I can turn it on just by holding down that red on button, and I can go ahead and launch the video player. So I'll double tap that, and I always get this message, and I can't hit install this feature because I don't have the admin password, so I just hit skip this installation, and it seems to work from there. Now, that's showing what I wanted to. That is the document. You may find that you have to go to hardware and select the proper camera. The first time I ever ran this thing, this is what I got, and notice that is me shown through the webcam on the laptop. So you do want to make sure that you're in the proper camera, and you might have to just kind of guess and test which one works for you. So I noticed some limitations with this smart video player, making it not so smart. First thing I noticed, I was expecting to be able to hit a button and then just write, and that's not happening for me. Although I did get my little ink icon here, which is great when it works. It gives me even more options and getting into the highlighters and even getting into all the different pens, which we'll see in other applications. But I don't know, for me, and then I've tested it on one other computer, they were not working for me. So the only way I did get to be able to write on this thing was using this little pen icon here. And once I tapped that, well, it gave me black ink, and I was able to switch colors by clicking this little color square there. I was also able to switch line thickness there, but what isn't right is none of these are showing in this video player. I can even though I hit red and it even changed red, I hit green, it even changed to green. It's still left over on the green that I chose there. So they don't. This does not match up to what you're seeing here. Not having highlighter is a big deal for me, a big deal breaker, I should say. I can full screen it. Notice we're kind of windowed, so I can hit this icon here that kind of shows a small rectangular with an arrow out to a big rectangle, and that that does give me a bigger picture. I moved to this floating toolbar, but that's kind of limited because now all of a sudden I've lost my color choices. It's still got the yellow from when I selected it before, but there's no other color choices unless I go back to windowed mode and go back to this color selector here. So not trying to really sell this because I've had bad luck with it. I've tried it on 2 different setups, and these are the limitations that I'm seeing. Let's go to the other way to use a document camera. And now let's see how to use that other piece of software, the Ladybug 2.0, to manipulate a projected document using your document camera in the Smart Board. I'm back at the Software Center. Remember, the icon to launch that looks like that, and you can also search Software Center if you don't see it in your Start menu. But here I am, so I'm going to do a search for Ladybug, and be aware of that spelling, Ladibug. Should pull up the Ladybug 2.0 software. So with it highlighted, I just tap Install, and bounces over to the installation process, and we should see another item pop up, and we're working on installing that Ladybug software. Okay, so the Ladybug software is finished installing from the Software Center. Went ahead and did a restart just to make sure everything has been reset. My document camera is still on and confirmed that it's plugged by USB cable into my computer. And I just want to find this Ladybug 2.0 icon. You should have it on your desktop. It's also accessible in the Start menu. If I just start typing in Lady with an I instead of a Y, it pops up here. So I can go ahead and launch it from either way. And notice there are 2 windows here, 2 Ladybug windows, because one refers to this kind of control panel where a lot of these buttons mirror the same buttons that are found in the menu buttons of the actual document camera. But there's also this window that is the document that I'm showing, and it is a live image. We can see it's shown off there. First thing I like to do is make it as big as possible. That's just the rectangle beside the X there. We'll full screen it. And what I found is that these hardware buttons, as well as the icon that will pop up that lets me have even more options, they have been working great for me. So I'm going to hit that black pen, and notice that icon showed up, and it's reflecting the black pen, and now I have the ability to write on this thing. But even better than that, I can do way more options than just these 4 colors. These will be reflected as I switch them there, but this is great for documents with small text. I can make my pen thinner if I want a little more detailed work there. And the highlighter is definitely something I'm a fan of if you've got a document that you're trying to highlight parts of. Now, also notice all those other pens are available too if I want to start coloring some. Oh, that's not a crayon. Well, all right, so noticing some limitations on this too. Let's see if any of the, it seems that it's just kind of choosing a thicker pen when I go to these different options. So let's see if text pen will work. Remember, that should recognize my text and then change it into actual text, but it's not. So I'm going to keep rolling just because I do want to show off the limitations as well. I would stick to highlighters, which seem to work great, and pens, which you can get into more colors with this fun color wheel here. And notice that's a really thin yellow line, hardly visible, but I can change the thickness as well for marking up a projected document. Now, one more feature I wanted to quickly show off is found in this tiny little circular icon with the pen inside it up in the upper right side. When I tap that, I get some options. One is to clear the ink, so that's a nice way to just erase everything real quick. The eraser does still work though, so I think even, yes, the circle and the tap still works. But let's see, once I have ink on there, that pen shows up, and I can actually capture it to notebook. So it says capture ink to notebook, which we'll see if it actually gets the whole document in there. But that should open up Smart Notebook. I know I said we're going to leave Smart Notebook out of this module, but this is just a way to get that into Smart Notebook, and maybe you want to pull it up again without having to worry about the document camera, because of course all our tools should work perfectly. Even my text pen should work in Smart Notebook. Hey, all right. And now let's talk about how to work with a PDF document with your Smart Board. PDFs you'll find often used as primary source documents that you may have downloaded or worksheets that you can find online are often in this PDF format because it's a great way to show off a document but kind of protect it, meaning you can't go in and manipulate the text once it's set as that format. I've downloaded the Declaration of Independence there. And if I just open it, it will open up in a program called Adobe Acrobat Reader. So I'm going to show that off because it actually does play nice with my Smart Board. So this is the default program to open up a PDF document. And I can mark it up. If I just hit a pen icon, then I get my little ink icon here, and I can just go for it. I can get into different options such as thickness of lines, colors, which do also reflect the buttons there, and they'll change accordingly. The highlighter, which is very useful for highlighting text, obviously. I found similar limitations to like it was with the ladybug and projecting a document. When I went into the fancy pen options, none of them really work. You can get a thicker line that way, and even the thickest possible in any of these. Even the creative pens end up just being a big thick line. So I would stick to the pens and the highlighters, and then mess with the various thicknesses there. But the big disadvantage to using Adobe Reader is the ink doesn't stay with the document. When I go back to my selector mode, and with Reader, it's kind of like almost like a smartphone or tablet where I'm scrolling, but notice the inking stays where it is. So not very useful if I have a document that I need to scroll up and down on. Let's see it the other way where the ink will actually stick on the document. Okay, so I'm going to open the same exact document, but instead of using Adobe Acrobat Reader, I'm going to use what's called Smart Ink Document Viewer. So I could go straight to the PDF document that I want to open, right-click on it, and instead of the default open with Adobe Reader, I can open with Smart Ink Document Viewer. So look for that Open With command, and Smart Ink Document Viewer will open the same document, but it is in a different program. The other way to go about that is to first open Smart Ink Document Viewer, which you can find in your Start menu. So if I just type in Smart, we can see Smart Ink Document Viewer there. It just opens a blank program where I'd have to hit the Open File icon and then find that same document. It's on my desktop, so whoops, there it is right there. So I can double tap that and it's open again. So the big advantage, you'll see a lot of similar stuff when I hit one of these pens. I get my ink option, very similar to what we were looking at before, where I can underline and write notes, and of course highlight, very useful. I think the same limitations apply again, even though this is a Smart branded program. It's not real happy about showing me the other types of pens. It's really just limited to the basic pens with different thicknesses, and then the highlighters with different thicknesses here. But the big difference here is when I go to scroll, and scrolling does work a little differently. I'll hit my selector button, and it doesn't, oh, and it will work just like Reader, except notice the ink sticks with the text, which is of course very handy for those long documents. Another way to scroll is of course using the scroll bar here, which is what I was expecting was the only way, but it looks like I can grab it and kind of do the smartphone tablet way to scroll as well. But definitely an advantage to having the pen stick on in the place where you left it. Now, if you'd like to save the notes that you added to any document, you can just hit this little save icon here and maybe rename it and save. And you'll notice whatever program you use to open it back up, even if I open it back up in Adobe Reader, those notes will now be part of the actual document. And one tip about opening any kind of file, Windows chooses a default program for any type of file. So the default program for a PDF is that Adobe Acrobat Reader, but if you find yourself always wanting to use the Smart Ink Document Viewer because of the advantages to having the ink stick on the document, and you don't want to go through the hassle of right-clicking and going to Open With and going there, you can actually, in that same menu, go to Open With and then choose Default Program. And there I can say, well, I actually want to use Smart Ink Viewer all the time. And so it went ahead and opened it. So again, remember that's got the advantage of when it's written on, it will stick there. And you'll notice my icon now changed to an ink icon instead of that Adobe icon, because now any PDF I just double click on will open now in that Smart Ink Document Viewer. And now let's show off how to navigate and annotate on a web page. I'm going to focus on Chrome and Firefox, leaving out Internet Explorer. It is basically a dead browser and losing support very soon. So let's just focus on Chrome and Firefox for now. So I can use the scroll bar to scroll up and down any web page. I can tap on any link to get there. So, you know, kind of just works like a big tablet. But as soon as I want to start annotating, marking up this thing, I just push one of the pen buttons. So if I grab black, we will see the icon appear, and remember that gets minimized. You can push it off to the side or have it wherever you want. But I should be able to just write on here and kind of point out things or tell students to go certain places. My colors are working. The highlighter is working, but I can't again, get to it there, I've got to go there, and I should be able to highlight all the text I want. The downside, it's a lot like in Adobe Reader. When I scroll and the pen is there, oh, and of course I've got to be in my selector. And notice I can move with the select. I can move the location just like I'm in Smart Notebook. But when I scroll the whole page up and down, the pen doesn't stay with it. So that is a disadvantage. And we'll quickly see the same kind of thing happening in Firefox. So I've switched over to Firefox. Again, can scroll up and down. I can click on links and get there. Again, scrolling up and down. I can get to my pens, point things out to students, get to a highlighter, and all that is working great. But when I go back to the selector mode and go to scroll, again, the pen stays as the page moves. So definitely make sure the page is where you want it to stay if you're going to be adding pen input to that. On either one, once pen input is there, I get a little icon floating somewhere, and that one's there, and that one is up there. So look for that little icon where I can clear the ink, or I can capture that ink to Notebook, and that's where it'll open up Smart Notebook, and we'll see this exact image, but in Smart Notebook, to where you can have all those extra tools at your disposal. Now let's take a look at how to navigate and annotate on a Word document. So I'm going to open up an existing Word document, and as it is, in selector mode, when I tap on the screen, it really just moves the cursor around. It's kind of like clicking on a mouse. Same for scrolling up and down on the scroll bar, just as if I were dragging a mouse up and down on it. Until I hit one of these pen buttons, we're really just kind of using it like a big mouse. So let me hit a pen button. We see the Smart Ink icon appear, which tells me that it's waiting for pen input. So if I start writing either with a pen or with a finger, I should have it work out. And we can go to the different options there and always tap it to minimize that. And same stuff applies that applied in the other places where we saw Smart Ink. I can highlight, and that works well. But those other pens, the crayon, the creative pen, the text pen, they don't work. They end up just showing up like a fatter pen of whatever color you choose. So you're mainly limited to the standard color pens and the highlighter when it comes to this stuff. This does work for the thickness of line, or you can just choose these options, and the colors will definitely convey if I choose a different color there. And you can see I'm in a very thick line here. Oh, I'm actually in a highlighter, so that makes sense. So, and while I'm at it, show off that I can erase and go back. Let's see, let's choose a custom color just for fun. And just like when we saw it in Adobe Acrobat Reader and the web browsers, the ink does not stay when I'm using Smart Ink. If I scroll, oh, and look, I'm over here writing, so let me erase that and go to selector mode and scroll, but the text just stays there. The benefit though in selector mode, and this does carry over to the other programs, is I can move these things around, although sometimes they don't get exactly grouped the way I'm expecting them to. So that's one way to write on a Word document using your Smart Board. Let's take a look at the other way that would address this issue where the pen doesn't stay where you write as you scroll. And now let's take a look at the other way to write on a Word document and have what you write actually stay where you put it as you scroll the document up and down. So I want to get into Smart Ink settings. It's really just a setting to change, and once you change it, you can keep it like that or change it back, just kind of depending on your preference. But one way to get to the settings is just by hitting one of the pen buttons there. I get my Smart Ink icon to pop up. I can hit this gear that's in the lower right corner there to enable Smart Ink settings. So as I hit that gear, oddly enough, a window popped up, but it didn't fill the screen, so I can just tap it to get it to come to being over the other windows. And another way to get to Smart Ink settings is through the Start menu. If I click that Start button there and just type in Smart, we can see Smart Ink settings is one of the things we can find. So the second menu item here is Microsoft Office settings, and we can see it's on using Smart Ink. I don't want to change it to use what's called Microsoft Ink, so Microsoft kind of takes control of the pen input. So as I hit OK, it's going to ask me to restart my Office application for the change to take effect. So that's the Word document. I can close and just open it back up. Oh, and of course I want to be in selector mode to do that. And so now as I hit the pen icon, we do get this icon popped up, but it's really just a message telling me that it's not being controlled by Smart. It's in Microsoft Office. It says use the pens ribbon to change ink properties. So we're not changing any properties in that little Smart Ink icon. We're going up to this pens ribbon, as they call it, and this is where we control all the properties of the pen input. By default, we're on black. Oddly enough, if I change it to red, it's not reflected. It's still black. So everything gets changed through these items here. So if I want red, I'd have to have it there, and then we can see how it behaves. So we can hit these little shortcuts to mess with the various properties. You can see that's the same color, just thinner. And we can get to the highlighter by hitting that. Nice highlighter there. We can get to the color and the thickness properties there. Different color highlighters. So you just kind of get out of the habit of using these and this to change your properties, and it's all controlled by this pens ribbon up here. So, and of course the big benefit, oh, here's the eraser. Oddly enough, when I hit that eraser, it also becomes an eraser. Not like if I hit that pen, will it be a red pen, but it will go back to pen and whatever property I left off on. So, let's see how that works. But again, the big advantage, if I go to selector mode and I start scrolling, it's actually going to stay with the document there. So no matter what kind of things I do, it stays there. And if I save the document and reopen it, my stuff will still be there as well. And now PowerPoint, which I must say is a little more confusing than the options we saw in Microsoft Word, but I'll try to be as clear as possible. Before anything, let's talk about how in PowerPoint, which I'll just open up a presentation here, there are two modes to be in. You can be in the editor mode, where usually you're on your desktop or laptop and you're adding content and manipulating the presentation. And then when it's showtime, well, that's when you start the actual show, where it fills the screen and you bounce through the slides. So the ink works differently in these different modes. So I'm going to direct us back to Smart Ink settings. Remember, I got there by just clicking one of the pen icons. The Smart Ink icon pops up, and then I can hit the gear to get to Smart Ink settings. The other way is in the Start menu, and I can just search for Smart Ink settings and open it that way too. And remember, we got to the second menu item, that's the Microsoft Office settings. And let's first talk about the difference between these two. Remember, in Word, this was Smart Ink, where you'd write on it and the page would still scroll up and down with the ink staying where it was. It wasn't part of the file. We used that mode for when we wanted the ink to stay with the page, and then you could even save it and become part of the file. Well, these two options really only make a difference in editor mode for PowerPoint. So let's see how that works. So here I am in editor mode, and that's where I can bounce to the different slides and make changes and create new content. But in my Smart Ink settings, I put it back on using Smart Ink so it doesn't permanently affect my content. Now, only in editor mode is when I can go ahead and hit a pen. I'll get my Smart icon. I can see my various options that I've been used to from Smart. And when I write on this thing, it'll let me write on, well, the slide itself, but it will also go up into the menu, and it just basically allows me to write all over the place using those various modes. So when I go to presentation mode, this stuff won't show. So as it is now, let me go to selector and start the show, and it's as if I wasn't writing on it at all. So that is the temporary aspect of this mode when it's in using Smart Ink. Now let's see how it's different using Microsoft Ink. So I'm going to switch that, hit apply, and it just tells me that I do have to exit PowerPoint. So let me close that out and then just reopen it, not expecting to see any of that inking that I was doing. But now, if I go to hit a pen, I'll get the Smart Ink icon again, but similar to in Word, it tells me, well, I'm not controlling my pens here. I've actually got a pen ribbon to control all that stuff. So let me get that out of the way. And here are my options. And it won't go beyond the slide itself. So, I can highlight and add any kind of annotation I want, and I can expect it to carry over. Oh, and this kind of displays, if I write, it doesn't let me go beyond. I mean, it lets me get off the slide there, but when we see it in presentation mode, which I'll go to slideshow from beginning, we can see all my stuff is still there and sized up to match how it looked when I was editing it. So that's the difference when it comes to these two options. It only matters in editor mode. We're going to see that this checkbox, enable the Smart PowerPoint plugin, it makes a big difference when you're in presentation mode. So let's get to that. Now with this box checked, if I'm in presentation mode, now I can still have use of the pens, and these three little dots are how I get to the different options. And it really is just pen with those 4 colors and these 4 line thicknesses, as well as highlighter with just these 2 colors. And that's it. Those are my only options when it comes to adding pen in presentation mode. And this is a Smart Ink thing. It's not a Microsoft thing. So the interesting part is when I make these changes in presentation mode, and then I exit presentation mode, which I can do on the screen by hitting this little X screen icon here, those will stay there, and if I save it, those will stay there too. So it's a little odd, if you think about these markings that I made were in editor mode, and those were with this Microsoft Ink. This highlighting and these curly cues were made using the Smart Ink plugin, which is this checkbox here. Now, this checkbox is what gave me that little tool. Let me show it off again. That is what gave me this little tool to get more options than just my standard 4 colors. Let's see, get out of presentation mode. If I uncheck that and apply, and it will ask me to restart PowerPoint, and I'll go ahead and not save those changes. Now we'll see that as PowerPoint comes up and I go into presentation mode again, I can still use the pens, but when I hit a pen, I don't get that handy tool that gives me the highlighter options and the different thickness options. I basically get the 4 options, 4 buttons, and an eraser. So, but just like when I did have my little tool here, it doesn't change the fact that now I have to escape on my keyboard to get out of the presentation, and it does still live there, and it'll even save there if I exit and save. The only difference is, with that unchecked there, we're not seeing the Smart Ink toolbar for PowerPoint show up in presentation mode. So I like to keep it there just to give me the highlighter option and the different thickness options. I would not check Use Presenter View when presenting. That instead of just duplicating the presentation on your laptop and on the screen, that sends it into extend mode, and the inking, the pens don't work well in extend mode. So that's why that is there. And there are these gestures. You'll notice on the very bottom it's an option to disable slide navigation gestures. It's really just two gestures that are good to know about, because if you don't, you might do them accidentally and think you're going crazy. Let me show those real quick. If I go back into presentation mode, of course I need to be in selector, like I'm using a mouse, to tap the button. Let's try it one more time. Now, of course I've got my little box back, and I can use these little arrows. That's part of SMART's plugin. But I can also just do this swipe gesture, and these are the gestures it's talking about to navigate between the slides and between the animations. So kind of think of it as like I'm turning a page here, and it will advance the slide or it will advance the next animation. So it works forward and backward. So if you find your slide changing and you're not sure why, it's probably because you swiped across the screen in the selector mode. Of course, if I change to a pen, it'll be a pen. It's got to be like I'm using it like a mouse. And now on to something really simple, and that is just putting a quick note up on the desktop. This is, if you want it the fastest way possible to scribble some information up to display, and maybe you've got no traditional whiteboard space at the moment, just the fastest way possible on your smartboard is to be on the desktop, so any windows you have closed or minimized, and then in one of the pens, just start writing. So it can't be in selector mode. Selector mode just kind of acts like a mouse. I'm just selecting icons on my desktop at this point. But if I hit a pen color and then I just write something, well, it turns into a note. And as I get closer to the edge, the note expands. It will expand in any direction and just kind of work like a simple whiteboard. So simple that there's no real menu to it. There's no real option to save unless you want to do a screen capture in one of the two ways we talked about. But again, it's just the simplest way to get something up there to display. We do get our little Smart Ink icon though, so some options are there, including the option to highlight and then change thickness. But as always, I'm not counting on the other cool pens to work. They work, but not as advertised. They really just show off a thicker line than the standard pens. Now, as we get to the end of Module 8, I want to mention the assignment for this module because it's definitely different from just submitting a .notebook file. Of course, there's no .notebook file to submit because all the things we've been doing are outside of Smart Notebook. So we're going to actually record a video of what's happening on the screen. So your submission will be that resulting video of you practicing some of these tools. I wouldn't say that you have to do everything, like if you use a document camera, whichever one you felt better about using. My personal preference is the Ladybug software. But if you've got PDFs that you like to show, have that be part of your video where you open up a PDF and annotate that, where you annotate something on a web browser, using Word, using PowerPoint. Again, you don't have to do them all, but I would ask that you use the things that you will actually find yourself using. So there are two ways to find the Smart Recorder. One is in our little Smart notification area icon, that blue icon with the white circle. And you can tap recorder there. Now it pops up somewhere, usually in one of the four corners. Last time I used it, put it there, so it popped up there again, but you might find it up there again. And it stays on top. No matter what I click through, you'll see that the recorder will stay on top there. And that's so you will have control of the recording to start it and then to stop it. So the red dot, that is what I tap on to get the recording going. It doesn't happen instantly. We'll see this saying initializing, and now it's recording once those numbers start moving. So this is an example of what I would ask you to do. Just use the various tools that we talked about. This is from the data projector, and just show me that you can annotate and use some of the various tools that we did show off. So that would be something projected by the data projector. Here is my PDF document, so I could highlight some of that. Mark up some of that, and then switching to a browser where do things like this. Let's see, another browser, of course one would do. I'm just kind of going through them all here. And then I've got Microsoft Ink enabled here, so here's where I fill that in, maybe show off some highlighter. And PowerPoint, and also still have the Microsoft Ink. So and then as I start my slideshow, we see it there, and we can continue to mark it up. And now I can stop my recording with this blue square here. When I do, it instantly asks me what I want to save it as. I'll put it on my desktop, and let's see, that name is fine. I'll just have to remember that name, or you can change it to whatever you want, but it just defaults to a date and looks like a random number. So as I hit save, it says it may take several minutes, so it's moving right along, but once it's done, I'll be able to find it on my desktop. So that would be just minimizing all these windows. And we should see it pop up probably right here. And that file will be the file that you point Canvas to and submit for Module 8. Please let me know, email me, call me, come visit me here at the Media Center of TC Robertson, and I would love to help you out if you're having any troubles, or if you just would like me to run through any of these modules, please feel free to contact me.